I'm Liz Matson, and I'm Senior Program Strategist for Hanford Challenge. And today we're talking about the proposed Holistic Settlement Agreement. So we're going to talk about how to comment on this. And to kick us off, I wanted to share an image that kind of captures the spirit of Hanford cleanup. Are we there yet? We are not there yet. The story of tank waste cleanup, which is the focus of this agreement, is that the timeline keeps getting longer and the price tag keeps going up. And this just keeps happening over and over again. Now, why we've brought you here is that I think we all have a role to play in trying to change this story. And the proposed holistic settlement agreement is just the latest intervention in trying to change that story. So it's not the first time, it's not the first schedule or scope for Hanford cleanup, which has been a little confusing for some folks who are just tuning in now. The first schedule for cleanup started in 1989, and it's changed a lot since then. This is just the latest iteration of changes to that scope and schedule for cleanup. And the focus of this agreement is cleaning up Hanford's tank waste, which is in the center of the site in the Central Plateau. So if you look at this map, the green section is the center of the site called the Central Plateau. All of the tank waste is in the 200 West and 200 East areas. And you can see this aerial photo. In the foreground, you've got the waste treatment plant, which is being built to immobilize that tank waste in glass. And then if you kind of extending out beyond the waste treatment plant, that's where the tank farms are. And so figuring out how to immobilize this waste in glass has been a very lengthy process. Because of that, the agencies who are in charge of Hanford cleanup, the decision makers, they're also called the tri-party agreement agencies because the agreement that was signed back in 1989 was called the tri-party agreement because there's three parties involved, the Department of Energy, Washington State's Department of Ecology, and the Environmental Protection Agency. These three agencies signed on to this. Anytime it changes, they all have to sign on to the new changes. Department of Energy made the mess and is in charge of cleaning it up. It doesn't do the actual cleanup work. It hires contractors to do the cleanup work. And it's also in charge of holding the contractors accountable to some extent. There are other agencies also tasked with that mission. And then you've got the regulators, and they're basically in charge of holding DOE's feet to the fire. DOE is another way to say Department of Energy. They go by Energy, DOE, US DOE. So Ecology and EPA, as the regulators, can say, we don't like how long it's taking to do this tank waste cleanup, and bring Energy to court and impose penalties, have different interventions. So the Holistic Settlement Agreement is the most recent intervention. Then we come to who else changes the story of Hanford cleanup? Decision influencers like you, Congress, the public, workers, other agencies, local governments. There's lots of entities in the decision influencer category. There's also government to government influence through sovereign tribal nations with treaty rights that are also working to change the story of Hanford cleanup. So where are we now with tank waste cleanup? We've got 177 underground leak-prone tanks that are holding, in total, 56 million gallons of high-level waste. That is a lot of waste. Only 3 gallons of that waste has been treated in a highly controlled grout test, which happened in 2017. The plan for the tank waste is for it to get glassified or vitrified. And to get some of the waste ready for the low-activity waste treatment plant, they're pre-treating it to remove mostly cesium-137. So one thing that has happened is we have about 700,000 gallons of waste that's been treated to remove mostly cesium-137. It's being staged so that once the low-activity waste facility is ready to start treating waste, which the deadline right now is August 2025. The date's moved in the past, it could move in the future, but that's the date right now. Once it's ready to accept that waste, there's waste ready to send to it. Another program we wanted to mention is the Tank Integrity Program, because a lot of people haven't heard of it. And because it's just helpful to know that there's a whole team whose job is to look at these leak-prone old tanks, find problems, predict problems, and then make a game plan when something goes wrong, or a contingency plan in case they're predicting something might go wrong. Is there a way to prevent it? They have all sorts of cool gadgets to get information, like robots and that can go under the tanks and inspect things. So really, right now, we're just waiting on a lot of the bigger cleanup for tank waste. We're waiting for low activity waste treatment facility to start. We're waiting for the high level waste facility, which hasn't been finished. It's still needs a lot of work to even get it ready to accept waste. There's new plans or resurfaced plans to try to use grout as a way to immobilize tank waste. Grout's something that's been tried in the past or been conceptually tried out in the past and then was abandoned when it wasn't actually cheaper than they thought or faster. And then there's a big thing we're all waiting for as a country, which is a deep geologic repository for high level waste. So right now, the only place you can put high level waste for long-term storage is in a deep geologic repository. We don't have one. So once Hanford gets high level waste in glass, it's going to be sitting in a facility on site in interim storage until there's a place to put it. So what's the holistic settlement agreement? And it's about tank waste and treating tank waste and when we're going to do it. It's a legal agreement, and the three agencies I talked about, Energy, Ecology, and EPA, they're the negotiators and signers. It's primarily Energy and Ecology duking it out on this one because Ecology is the prime regulator on tank waste at Hanford. But EPA was at the table the whole time. And the comment period runs through September 1st. So there's three parts to the agreement: settlement agreement terms, the consent decree changes, and the tri-party agreement milestone changes. The consent decree changes, so the consent decree, I kind of nodded to it earlier. Ecology took Energy to court because of, and sued them, saying, you're missing too many milestones. What came out of it was the consent decree. The consent decree has changed multiple times since then, and this is the latest of those changes. In order for any of those changes to be finalized, it has to go in front of a judge. So the tri-party agreement is a legally binding agreement, but it's more of a, like the three agencies, Energy, Ecology, and EPA, they finalize it together. There isn't really a third party that comes in to arbitrate that process or like give the go-ahead. For the consent decree, they have to go get a judge to sign off on the changes and do it before a judge once they're finalized. So what are the highlights of the agreement? There's a ban on using this newish rule to reclassify high-level waste. We really didn't like this, the way they were going to try to bring this to Hanford. A lot of groups like ours fought this. It's formalized in the settlement agreement terms that they are not going to use this at Hanford for now. So it could come up in the future. So we're watching that one, but at least for now, they're not going to try to reclassify high-level waste using this rule. And we can talk about that more later. If you have questions about that, reach out. New tank space. So we've been asking for a long time for new tank space. These tanks are old. We need more space. So we got 1 million gallons of new space, but it's not coming until for 16 years. And it's not being used for contingency space for leaking tanks. So make a note of that because that'd be a good comment to add as a personalized comment. They're also proposing to grout tens of millions of gallons of tank waste. Grout is something that Hanford Challenge has had an issue with and has been asking questions about because we believe it is being oversold as in terms of there's a lot of momentum saying it's going to save all this money. It's going to accelerate the schedule for tank waste cleanup, but we're not sold. We don't think there's enough evidence yet that that's true for how much momentum is behind this story. And so the holistic settlement agreement is setting in motion a plan to grout tens of millions of gallons of tank waste from 200 West area. They haven't picked the 22 tanks this waste would come from. They don't know where it would happen. They don't know how it would happen. There's some, bounded ideas of like within which that could happen. It might be a grout plant on site. It might be off site. They could be shipping liquid waste. They could be shipping grouted waste. Lots of questions about this yet. But helpful to know that this plan is setting that in motion. If you want to know more about our concerns with grout, you can read all about them at hanfordchallenge.org/grout. Another piece of this agreement is delaying delays. So maybe we should have expected this. I was surprised that after 4 years of closed door negotiations, which is how long this whole settlement agreement took to come out, instead of changing dates and pushing them out, they put asterisks next to dates they knew were going to change and said we're going to change them later. So there's kind of two batches that these asterisked milestones fall under. One is in the next 5 years, they're going to renegotiate the deadline for the high-level waste facility to be making vitrified high-level waste. So right now, that date is 2033. Assuming, based on information we've received, that date slips to 2036, then this other batch of asterisked milestones would be negotiated within 18 months of the high-level waste facility making glass. So that pushes that date to around 2038. So we've got, in 5 years, we'll have a new date for high-level waste, probably around 2038 or later. You're going to have, in 14 years, new dates on a lot of milestones that are contingent on knowing how well is the high-level waste facility functioning, how much glass is coming out, and then they figure out, okay, this is more realistic for when these milestones and this scope of work is actually going to be finished. And then the last piece is something that's not new. There's been a plan for direct feed high-level waste talked about, but this is the first formalized place. It's in writing, it's in the plan now, where instead of using the pre-treatment facility, which was the original plan, which has a lot of issues, thank you whistleblowers for helping us with that one. Instead of the pre-treatment plant being a place where the tank waste goes and is split into two streams of waste, low activity and high level waste, they've had, for low activity waste, they've already replicated what that facility would do, which is what I was talking about with removing the cesium-137, mostly from the waste, to prep it for the low activity waste facility. So they're doing that for low activity waste. They've been talking about doing that also for high level waste. So they basically just have to replicate what the pretreatment facility was going to do to get that high level waste ready for the high level waste facility. And there's a lot of steps involved. Well, lots of time to learn how that unfolds, but it's just helpful to know that's the new, clearly defined plan for high level waste. So you can learn more about the Holistic Settlement Agreement. We made a whole webpage for you, which includes a new section about what do these changes mean for the future. It's a little weedy, but the idea is it's kind of laying out, this is what we think is going to happen. So the Holistic Settlement Agreement basically says, this is where we're going. And then there's the actually walking through that path. As the agencies walk through that path, there'll be lots of chances for weighing in, public comment, seeing how things are shaking out. And the tricky piece with Hanford cleanup is when you get input, when you weigh in. You don't want to weigh in so late that the decision's been made. Sometimes it's called decide, announce, defend. We've made this decision, and then the public involvement is just kind of a check the box. We have to do it. We're not going to change the decision. Arguably, you could say, after 4 years of closed door negotiations, Liz, how likely is it that they're going to change their minds when they read our comments? And to be honest, it feels kind of depressing, but it doesn't mean we don't have a chance. I think we do have a chance because they are going to read all the comments, and enough people comment, it can change their minds. They could go back to the table and say, you know what, we really need to rethink this approach we had and change it. If they do that, you could have another comment period on the updated version of the Holistic Settlement Agreement. Anyway, if you check out this page, hanfordchallenge.org/holistic agreement, you'll see the kind of this is what we think is going to shake down in the future over the next, 14 plus years. It's a long time. We also made a tank waste cleanup page for you. We realize that we talk about tank waste cleanup, but what is it? And we don't really explain it that well. We couldn't find a place you go to kind of get that background. So we tried to make one for you with plain language, just laying out where are we at and kind of binning it into 3 categories. Please check it out and tell us how we did. If you're still confused or you're like, this doesn't make sense, please let us know. We'd love for it to actually be useful for you. So you're ready to write your comment. What are some tips for writing a comment? Number 1, share why you care. This is, the fancy term for this is your positionality. Who are you? Where did you grow up? What was your job? What's your background? If any of those things inform why you care about Hanford cleanup or what you'd like changed, it's important to mention that. And you can put that in your introduction. Like, for example, if you worked on the Hanford site, you want to mention that. Number 2, be specific. So this can be both technical and values driven. And I'm going to give a technical example first. So one of the things that they're proposing to do is make a decision about grouting the tens of millions of gallons of tank waste by the end of this calendar year. So by December 2024. And when we saw that date, we were like, wait, what? They're not planning to have any data about a test they're doing. The very first actual test with 2,000 gallons of tank waste. They've done a test on 3 gallons, but 3 gallons, 3 to tens of millions of gallons is a stretch. So they're doing this 2,000 gallon test, but they're not going to have any data on that test until the spring of next year, spring of 2025 at the earliest. But they want to make a decision about what to do with tens of millions of gallons of waste by the end of this year, before they have that data. So in the spirit of being specific, instead of just saying delay this or wait until you have more information before you make this decision, we were really clear and we said exactly what we want, that we want the date changed to within 12 months of receiving all of this information about the test, including how long it takes to find a grout recipe that works and hardens tailored to this specific tank waste, what the grout to waste ratios are. So how much grout do you need to waste to make it work? Is it 4 to 1, 10 to 1, 2 to 1? It really, that has a big impact on future decisions. Grout setting time, how long does it take to harden? Performance of the in-tank pretreatment system. So they're using a new system for this 2,000 gallon test where they're putting a filter system in the tank to filter out that cesium-137. They've never done that before. Don't you want that data before you make a giant decision? Also, transportation, cost, like get some data about these before you make a big decision. That's going to have a big impact. Also vendor quality of work. So they're going to be shipping those 2,000 gallons. Half is going to Texas, half is going to Utah. And those sites themselves are going to be grouting the waste and disposing it there. So they're shipping liquid waste that's had the cesium-137 removed by truck, half to Texas, half to Utah. What is it like to work with those 2 facilities? We want all that information before they make this decision. And also we want them to require a public comment period on their proposal before they finalize it. So we put all that in there. It's like super specific, and we do not expect you to like be referencing milestones unless you're in it. If you're in it and you're ready, like get into the specifics, because it makes a difference. If you're a decision maker and you receive someone saying, I care about tank waste cleanup, please do a better job. Like, what do I do with that as a decision maker? Or I want you to change this date to this very specific new date. Oh, now I have something. Are we going to do this? What's the plan? What's our response to this? This also specificity is really helpful for values. So, and this came up in our in-person workshop. If you don't like the idea of liquid waste being transported on roads, then say that and have that specificity in your comments. So if you have certain values about Hanford cleanup that you care about, or you want to kind of sit with that question and articulate, those could show up in your comments too, and that can be really helpful. So now it's time to weigh in. We've got 2 petitions, one on public involvement and one on the holistic settlement agreement itself. The public involvement petition's all about what they can do better in the future. We did not like the way they rolled out the public involvement for this. So we said, okay, going forward, please do it this way. Second petition's all about the settlement agreement itself, what we'd like changed. So you can put in personalized comments for both of those. You can also write a comment directly into the portal, and I'm going to show you how to do that. All right. So this is how I do it, which instead of, remembering a specific web address, I'm just going to show you how I get there. So DOE's Hanford site is hanford.gov. So you go to calendar and you'll see the open comment periods. Click on the tank waste cleanup comment period. And then you can see, please submit comments by September 1st electronically. Click yes. And then you get to this public comment form. So you can both write your comments directly into this text bubble, or you can upload a file if you have something you've typed up. It could be a PDF or a Word doc, or you can upload it here. And then another cool feature is you can, if you click on view comments, you'll see all the comments that have been submitted so far. So those are some tips for comment writing. I hope that was helpful. If it wasn't, or if you have a question, reach out. Happy to talk to you. If you're not sure if a comment you're writing makes sense, or if you're not sure how to say something, we're happy to try to troubleshoot with you. And happy commenting. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.